Captain Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars streak past as his ship traveled through hyperspace. He had been a diplomat for 12 years now, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Council. In all that time, he had never felt fear like this. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Vrin Collective," said his communications officer. Her voice trembled slightly. Daewon nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing a massive reptilian creature. The Vrin commander's scales were dark red, almost black, and his eyes glowed with an amber light. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding stones. "Human vessel, you have 48 hours to evacuate the colonies of New Busan, Harmony Station, and Terra Nova. After that time, these worlds belong to the Vrin Collective. Any humans remaining will be removed by force." The transmission ended abruptly. Daewon closed his eyes for a moment, then turned to his crew. "Set course for New Busan. We'll start the evacuation there." Dr. Hannah Park approached him from the science station. She was young for a chief xenobiologist, only 32, but her knowledge of alien species was unmatched in the human fleet. "Captain, may I speak with you privately?" In his ready room, Hannah pulled up files on her datapad. "I've been studying the Vrin for years. They've never lost a war, not once in 10,000 years of recorded history." "There's a first time for everything," Daewon said, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. "You don't understand," Hannah continued. "Every species that resisted them was either conquered or wiped out completely. The Talarian Empire fought them for 50 years and lost every world. The Kemnar Confederation surrendered after the Vrin destroyed just one of their planets as a demonstration. These aren't just warriors, Captain. They're perfect killers." Daewon looked out the viewport at the stars. "Then why are they demanding our colonies? Why not just take them?" "Because they enjoy making other species bow," Hannah said quietly. "They want us to surrender without a fight. It proves their dominance." The horizon's edge dropped out of hyperspace near New Busan 3 hours later. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents. 40,000 people called it home. Most of them were farmers, growing food for other human colonies in the sector. Commander Tae-sung Lee, Daewon's second in command, coordinated the evacuation. He was a military man through and through with 20 years of service. His jaw was set in a tight line as he worked. "We have enough transport ships for maybe half the population. The rest will need to stay behind or take civilian vessels that aren't rated for long-distance travel." "Then we make multiple trips," Daewon said. "We don't have time for that, sir." "The Vrin deadline. We make multiple trips," Daewon repeated firmly. On the surface of New Busan, people packed their belongings in a panic. Children cried. Parents tried to decide what to take and what to leave behind forever. Town leaders argued about who should evacuate first. Ambassador Myung-hee Choi arrived on the horizon's edge 12 hours into the evacuation. She was 70 years old and had been humanity's voice in the Galactic Council since the beginning. Her face was lined with exhaustion. "The Council refuses to help," she told Daewon. "Every single species voted to stay neutral. They say this is between humanity and the Vrin." "They're afraid," Hannah said. "Of course they're afraid," Ambassador Choi snapped. "The Vrin have crushed civilizations far older and stronger than ours. The Council members have seen it happen. They know that opposing the Vrin means death. So they'll just let us be destroyed?" Tae-sung asked angrily. Ambassador Choi sat down heavily. "They expect us to surrender. They think we're smart enough to know when we're beaten." Daewon felt something cold settle in his stomach. Are we? Are we smart enough to surrender?" The ambassador looked at him for a long moment. "That's not my decision to make, Captain. That decision will come from Earth." They evacuated 30,000 people from New Busan over the next 2 days. 10,000 remained, either because they refused to leave their homes or because there simply wasn't enough space on the ships. The deadline was 6 hours away when Daewon received new orders from Earth Defense Command. All human vessels are to withdraw immediately from the disputed colonies. Earth government is considering the Vrin ultimatum. Daewon read the message 3 times. Considering the ultimatum. That meant they might surrender. "Captain, we're detecting a massive hyperspace disturbance," his sensor officer called out. "Multiple Vrin warships entering the system." "How many?" Tae-sung demanded. 30. No, 40. 50 contacts. "Sir, it's an entire fleet." Daewon's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "Hail them. Tell them we're evacuating civilians under interstellar law. Tell them we need more time." There was no response. The Vryn fleet moved into orbit around New Busan. Their ships were enormous, each one 3 times the size of the horizon's edge. They looked like they were made from obsidian and steel. All sharp angles and weapon ports, Captain. They're powering weapons, the tactical officer said. They're targeting the planet. No, Hana whispered. There are still 10,000 people down there. Daewon jumped to his feet. Open a channel. Tell them there are civilians still on the surface. Tell them. The Vryn fleet fired. Beams of purple energy lanced down from orbit, striking cities and farms. The horizon's edge picked up thousands of life signs vanishing in seconds. The bombardment lasted 5 minutes. When it ended, the sensors showed no human life signs on New Busan at all. The bridge was silent. Daewon stared at the screen, watching smoke rise from the burning planet. 10,000 people. Gone. The Vryn commander's face appeared on screen again. The colony of New Busan now belongs to the Vryn Collective. Human ships have 24 hours to evacuate the remaining 2 colonies, or they will meet the same fate. Do not test our patience again. After the transmission ended, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Ambassador Choi stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I need to send a message to Earth, she said. I need to tell them what happened here. 6 hours later, Earth's response came through every communication channel in human space. It was broadcast to every ship, every colony, every station. It went to the Galactic Council. It went to the Vryn Collective. The message was simple and clear. As of this moment, humanity declares a state of war with the Vryn Collective. The attack on New Busan was an act of mass murder. We will not surrender. We will not retreat. We will fight until either the Vryn pay for their crimes or humanity ceases to exist. To every human in the galaxy, come home. We have a war to win. Daewon listened to the message and felt something change inside him. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Anger. Cold, burning anger. Hana pulled up her files again, the ones about species that fought the Vryn and lost. Captain, we can't win this. No one has ever beaten them. Then we'll be the first, Daewon said. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council went into emergency session. They broadcast warnings to humanity, showing footage of destroyed worlds and conquered species. They sent representatives to Earth, begging humanity's leaders to reconsider. They explained in detail exactly how powerful the Vryn were. Humanity's answer was to start building warships. On Earth, factories that made colony supplies retooled to make weapons. Shipyards that built cargo haulers began constructing military vessels. Every human with military training was called up. Reserves were activated. The entire species mobilized for war. The Vryn found this amusing. They had seen desperate species before. They always fell in the end, but they had never fought humanity before. And that would make all the difference. Admiral Yuna Kang watched the Vryn Fourth Armada approach through her tactical display. 200 warships moving in perfect formation like a school of metal fish. They had destroyed 17 star systems in a single month during the Talarian War. Now they were coming for humanity's mining colony on Kepler 442b. They think we'll run, said Colonel Jinwoo Park, standing beside her on the bridge of the battleship Defiance. He commanded the special operations teams that had been training for this moment. Let them think that, Yuna replied. She was 45 years old and had been preparing for this war since the day humanity joined the Galactic Council. She had studied every battle the Vryn ever fought. She knew their tactics, their formations, their strategies. The Vryn were brilliant warriors, but they always fought the same way. Humanity would not. The colony on Kepler 442b had a population of 15,000, mostly miners and their families. They were digging up rare metals that Earth needed for shipbuilding. When the Vryn fleet appeared in the system, Yuna gave the order, begin Operation Thunderstorm. The miners had been working for 3 weeks to hollow out asteroids and fill them with rockets. Now those asteroids began moving, pushed by hidden thrusters. The Vryn sensors detected them but classified them as natural debris. The asteroids were moving too slowly to be weapons. That was the point. The Vryn fleet entered orbit around Kepler 442b in their standard attack formation. Battleships in front, cruisers in the middle, support vessels in the rear. They had used this formation for thousands of years because it worked. Nothing could break it. Fire, Yuna said calmly. Humanity's defense platforms hidden on the planet's 3 moons opened fire. The Vryn shields absorbed the shots easily. Their return fire destroyed 2 platforms immediately. But the platforms had done their job. They had made the Vryn focus on the moons, the asteroids struck from behind. Each one was moving at 3,000 meters per second, accelerated by their rockets in the final seconds. They hit with the force of nuclear weapons. The Vryn rearguard vanished in balls of fire and shrapnel. 15 ships destroyed in 15 seconds. Now the radiation belt, Una ordered. Kepler 442b had a strong magnetic field that created bands of intense radiation around the planet. Human ships had shielding designed to handle it. The Vryn shields were made for weapons, not natural phenomena. Colonel Jinwoo's stealth ships had been hiding in that radiation belt for hours, waiting. They emerged like ghosts, 30 small frigates against the massive Vryn fleet. But they weren't trying to win a straight fight. They fired electromagnetic pulse weapons at point-blank range, then dove back into the radiation belt before the Vryn could respond. The EMPs overloaded Vryn shields and sensors, leaving them blind and vulnerable for precious seconds. In those seconds, the human defense fleet struck. Admiral Una's ships didn't form neat lines like the Vryn expected. They came from 6 different directions, flying erratic courses, breaking every rule of proper naval combat. The Vryn tried to reform their battle line, but human ships kept darting in and out, hitting weak points and disappearing. The battle lasted 4 hours. In the end, the Vryn won. They destroyed the human defense fleet and took control of Kepler 442b. But they left 60 of their own ships burning in space. 60 ships out of 200, 30% casualties. The Vryn had never lost 30% of a fleet in a single battle, not ever. On the planet's surface, the human miners refused to surrender. They took their mining equipment into the tunnels and began guerrilla warfare. The Vryn found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see, using weapons that made no sense. Miners dropped tunnel ceilings on Vryn patrols. They used mining explosives to destroy Vryn supply depots. They turned their industrial vehicles into improvised tanks. Colonel Jinwoo led teams behind enemy lines on 3 other occupied colonies. They taught the civilians how to fight, how to sabotage, how to survive. The Vryn had conquered many species before, but none of them had fought back like this. Conquered populations were supposed to accept their fate. Humans did not. Dr. Sung-Min Baek worked in a laboratory deep under Earth's surface. He was building something the galaxy had never seen before, a military artificial intelligence that learned from every battle. Every time the Vryn fought, Sung-Min's AI studied their tactics, predicted their next move, found their weaknesses. "They're too predictable," he told Admiral Una during a secure transmission. "They have thousands of years of military tradition, and that's their weakness. They can't adapt quickly. They do what worked before." "And we don't have any tradition," Una said, understanding. "We can try anything." Dr. Hannah Park, now working with military intelligence, discovered something else. She studied the Vryn prisoners that human forces had captured. The Vryn were confused by humanity's treatment of them. Humans gave them medical care, fed them, followed the interstellar laws about prisoners of war. Why? One captured Vryn officer demanded. "We destroyed your colony, killed your people. Why do you not torture us, kill us?" "Because we're not you," Hannah replied simply. The concept disturbed the Vryn more than any weapon could. They began to realize they were fighting something they didn't understand. The Vryn showed no mercy and expected none. But humans drew a line between soldiers and civilians, between combat and cruelty. It made no tactical sense to the Vryn. That was because the Vryn had never learned an important truth. Mercy could be a weapon too. Every prisoner the humans treated well was a soldier who went home and told others that humans weren't the monsters the Vryn leaders claimed. Every civilian the humans protected was a voice that spoke against the war. The Vryn Empire was unified by fear, but humans were planting seeds of doubt. 3 months into the war, Earth's shipyards completed their first major military buildup. 300 new frigates, all designed from scratch. They weren't like any military ships in the galaxy. They were small, fast, and covered in stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to sensors. The designer was a civilian engineer named Bo Young Shin. She had worked on cargo ships before the war, but she understood something the military traditionalists didn't. Space was big and empty. You didn't need to be strong if no one could find you. "The Ghost Fleet is ready," she reported to Admiral Una. Una smiled for the first time in months. "Then let's introduce the Vryn to a new kind of warfare." The Vryn were supplying their occupation forces through predictable routes. They had to. Their logistics system had worked for thousands of years. They moved supplies in massive convoys protected by heavy warships. No one had ever successfully raided a Vryn supply convoy. Humanity didn't raid the convoys. They hunted them. The Ghost Fleet split into 30 groups of 10 ships each. They waited along the Vryn supply routes, silent and invisible. When a convoy passed, they struck from point-blank range, destroyed the supply ships and vanished before the escorts could react. Then they moved to a new position and waited for the next convoy. In 2 weeks, the Ghost Fleet destroyed 70% of the Vryn logistics train in the Epsilon sector. Occupation forces on 5 colonies began running out of food, fuel, and ammunition. The Vryn had to pull back from 2 colonies completely. The Galactic Council watched in shock. Species that had been conquered by the Vryn sent secret messages to humanity, asking how they were doing it. The answer was simple but hard to accept. Humans fought like no one had ever fought before. Admiral Yuna developed a new strategy called the Wildfire Protocol. Human fleets abandoned traditional naval formations entirely. Each ship operated independently, making its own decisions, attacking its own targets. The Vryn tried to predict human fleet movements and failed every time, because there was no pattern to predict. Captain Daewon, now commanding a heavy cruiser called Retribution, led a raid on a Vryn communications hub. His ship approached from above the galactic plane, an angle the Vryn never expected. He destroyed the hub and jumped to hyperspace before reinforcements arrived. Without communications, Vryn fleets in 3 systems couldn't coordinate their defenses. On occupied Kepler 442b, the miners were still fighting. They had been under Vryn control for 4 months now, and they had killed more Vryn soldiers than had died in the original battle. The Vryn commander sent a message to his superiors. "We control the cities, but the humans control the tunnels. We cannot defeat them without destroying the entire planet." The Vryn High Command authorized orbital bombardment, but before they could carry it out, Colonel Jin Woo's commandos infiltrated the Vryn flagship and sabotaged its reactor. The ship exploded in orbit, killing 3,000 Vryn and destroying 4 other vessels in the debris. 6 months into the war, something unprecedented happened. The Vryn Empire requested reinforcements from their home fleets. They had never needed reinforcements before. They always conquered with the forces they started with, but they had never fought humans before. Dr. Sungmin's AI analyzed all the data and made a prediction. "We can't win a war of attrition. The Vryn Empire is too big, but we don't need to win that war. We need to break their will to fight, make them realize the cost of victory is too high." "How do we do that?" Admiral Yuna asked. "We take the fight to them," Sungmin replied. "Show them that nowhere is safe, not even their fortress worlds." Captain Yoon Ji-yoon flew her experimental stealth fighter through the debris field running silent. Behind her, the Vryn patrol cruiser searched for the human ships that had just destroyed their supply depot. The cruiser's sensors swept past her twice, but they detected nothing. Boyoung Shin's jamming technology worked perfectly. "Ghost 7 to Ghost Leader," Yoonji whispered into her comm. "I'm in position behind the cruiser, waiting for your signal. Copy that, Ghost 7. All units attack on my mark." 20 stealth fighters emerged from the debris field simultaneously, firing missiles at point-blank range. The Vryn cruiser's shields came up, but too late. 16 missiles struck home. The cruiser broke apart in a silent explosion of fire and metal. "Ghost Fleet, mission successful. Return to the carrier." Yoonji smiled inside her helmet. She was 28 years old and had been a civilian pilot before the war. Now she was part of humanity's most elite strike force. 6 months ago, the Vryn controlled 12 human colonies. Today they controlled 8, and that number was dropping. On the occupied colony of Harmony Station, Lieutenant Jae-hyun-oh crawled through maintenance tunnels with his resistance cell. They had 15 fighters ranging in age from 17 to 60. They were armed with improvised explosives and weapons stolen from Vryn supply depots. "The patrol changes in 3 minutes, whispered Soo-jin, his second in command. She had been a school teacher before the occupation. Now she made bombs. Jae-hyun checked his watch. The Vryn were predictable. They changed their patrols every 6 hours exactly on schedule. Military efficiency. It was also their weakness. Everyone ready? We hit the ammunition depot, then scatter. Meet at Safe House 7 in 2 hours. They struck at the moment the patrols changed. The explosion destroyed enough ammunition to supply a battalion for a month. By the time Vryn reinforcements arrived, the resistance fighters had disappeared into the civilian population. The Vryn occupation commander was furious. "How many humans did we kill in retaliation?" he demanded. "None, sir. We cannot identify which civilians are resistance fighters." "Then execute civilians at random until they surrender their fighters." But when the Vryn tried this, it backfired. The civilians didn't surrender. Instead, more joined the resistance. For every human the Vryn killed, 10 more picked up weapons. The Vryn had ruled through fear for thousands of years, but fear only works when the terrified have hope that submission will save them. Humans didn't believe submission would save anything. Engineer Bo-Young Shin presented her latest creation to Admiral Yuna. "We've been analyzing captured Vryn technology. Their shields are powerful but inflexible. They're designed to block energy weapons from predictable angles. So I designed these." She pulled up schematics for a new missile. "They don't fly straight. They spiral, dodge, change direction randomly. The Vryn targeting computers can't predict their path. We've increased hit probability by 60%. How soon can you produce them?" "We've already made 10,000. Production continues at the rate of 1,000 per day." Yuna shook her head in wonder. Before the war, Bo-Young had designed cargo containers. Now she was humanity's most valuable military engineer. The war had transformed everyone. The Battle of the Helios Nebula began when a human fleet ambushed a Vryn supply convoy. The Vryn escort fleet responded, confident in their numerical superiority. They had 40 warships against 20 human vessels. They should have won easily. Admiral Yuna used the nebula itself as a weapon. The dense gas clouds scattered sensors and blocked long-range weapons. Human ships equipped with short-range scanners could see better than Vryn ships designed for open space combat. The battle became a knife fight in the fog. "All ships free hunt protocol," Yuna ordered. "Break formation and engage at will." Human ships scattered into the nebula like wolves hunting in a forest. The Vryn tried to maintain their battle line, but they couldn't see their enemy clearly. Human ships appeared from the gas clouds, fired, and disappeared again. The Vryn fired at shadows and empty space. When the battle ended 4 hours later, the Vryn had lost 28 ships. Humanity had lost 7. For the Vryn, it was their worst defeat in recorded history. For humanity, it was proof that they could win. Dr. Sung-Min Bayek's artificial intelligence had now analyzed 400 Vryn battles. It made a report that changed everything. The Vryn have 17 standard fleet tactics. When they encounter a situation, they choose the tactic that worked before in similar situations. They are extremely good at executing these tactics. But they don't improvise. If we create situations they haven't encountered before, they default to their basic formation and attack directly. So we need to keep surprising them, Daewon said, reading the report. Exactly. Every time we fight the same way twice, we give them a chance to learn and adapt. We need to make every battle different. Captain Eunji led a raid on a Vryn fortress world in the Zeta sector. The fortress was supposed to be impregnable, protected by orbital weapons platforms and a garrison fleet. The Vryn had held it for 3,000 years. 16 species had tried to attack it, all failed. Humanity succeeded by not attacking at all, at least not the way the Vryn expected. Eunji's stealth fighters infiltrated the orbital defenses by flying in the planet's shadow, using the gravity well to slingshot around to the opposite side. They didn't attack the fortress. They attacked the power stations supplying it. When the lights went out, Colonel Jinwoo's special forces were already on the ground. They had infiltrated weeks earlier, posing as refugees from conquered colonies. Now they struck from inside the fortress itself. By the time the Vryn understood what was happening, human ships had captured the orbital platforms and were using them to bombard Vryn reinforcements. The fortress fell in 6 hours. A stronghold that had stood for 3 millennia was taken by humans in less than a day. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions every week now. They watched in disbelief as humanity continued to push back the Vryn Empire. Representatives from conquered species began asking dangerous questions. If the humans can resist the Vryn, why couldn't we? Because the humans are insane, replied a counselor from the Talarian species. They fight without regard for casualties. They sacrifice entire fleets for small victories. They take risks that no rational species would take. Dr. Hannah Park, attending the council as a human observer, stood to respond. We don't sacrifice our people carelessly. Every loss is mourned. Every death is remembered. But we learned something in our history that perhaps other species forgot. Sometimes the cost of survival is everything you have, and we're willing to pay that cost. On Earth, the factories ran day and night. The shipyards built vessels faster than any civilization in galactic history. Humanity had always been good at building things, at solving problems through engineering and determination. Now they applied that talent to war. A Vryn intelligence officer filed a report that his superiors didn't want to believe. Humanity is producing military vessels at 3 times the rate we predicted. Their construction methods are inefficient by our standards, but they compensate through sheer numbers. For every ship we destroy, they build 2 more. How is that possible? They're a new species. They should lack the industrial capacity. They converted their entire civilian economy to military production. Every factory, every resource, everything is dedicated to the war effort. It's economically insane. They'll ruin themselves. But in the meantime, they're drowning us in ships. Lieutenant Jaehyun's resistance cell on Harmony Station grew from 15 fighters to 200 in 3 months. They controlled the underground tunnels, the maintenance systems, and had infiltrated several Vryn administrative offices. The Vryn held the surface, but humans owned everything beneath it. We received a message from Earth, Sujin told him one evening. A fleet is coming to liberate Harmony Station. Jaehyun felt a surge of emotion. They had been fighting alone for so long, surviving on hope and stubbornness. When? 2 weeks. We need to prepare. When the fleet arrives, we strike from inside while they attack from outside. We coordinate timing through this encrypted channel. The Vryn never saw it coming. Admiral Yuna's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect synchronization with the resistance uprising. While the Vryn garrison scrambled to respond to attacks from the planet's surface, human warships destroyed their orbital defenses. The battle for Harmony Station lasted 8 hours. By the end, the Vryn garrison had surrendered, becoming the first Vryn military unit to surrender in 4,000 years. The psychological impact was immense. If the Vryn could surrender, they could be beaten. Captain Yoonji received a new assignment. Her stealth fighter wing would strike at the Vryn home system itself, not to invade but to prove that humanity could reach anywhere. The mission was called Operation Dagger. We're not trying to win a battle, Admiral Yuna explained during the briefing. We're sending a message. Nowhere is safe, not even their capital. Yoonji and her wing of 30 fighters jumped deep into Vryn space. They avoided patrols, dodged sensor nets, and infiltrated the home system. They destroyed a communications satellite and a minor military facility, then jumped away before the defense fleets could respond. The damage was minimal. The message was not. General Sujin Kwan watched the tactical display from her command center deep inside Mars. She commanded the Home Defense Corps, responsible for protecting humanity's core systems. For 18 months, her job had been mostly quiet. The war was fought far from Earth and Mars, out in the colonies and occupied territories. That was about to change. General, we're detecting a massive hyperspace disturbance. Multiple contacts inbound to the Sol system. Sujin's blood ran cold. How many? Still counting. Over 300 ships, ma'am. It's the Vryn Worldbreaker fleet. The Worldbreaker fleet was a myth made real. These were vessels designed for one purpose: to shatter planets that refused to surrender. They had destroyed 14 worlds in the Vryn's ancient history. Now they were coming to Earth. All defense platforms to full alert. Deploy every available ship. Send an emergency call to all human fleets. And someone get me Admiral Yuna. Yuna's face appeared on screen moments later. I see them, Sujin. My fleet is 3 days away at maximum speed. We don't have 3 days. They'll reach Earth in 18 hours. Then hold for 18 hours. The Indomitable is closer. Captain Minseo should reach you in 12 hours with her battle group. General Sujin had 500 defense platforms and 200 ships. Against the Worldbreaker fleet, it wouldn't be enough. But humanity had learned to make impossible things possible. Begin Protocol Fortress, she ordered. Earth's orbital industry went into overdrive. Construction platforms, mining vessels, cargo haulers, everything that could mount a weapon was armed and positioned. Civilian ships were evacuated and rigged as automated rams. The moon bases launched every fighter they had. Mars added its defensive fleet to Earth's. When the Vryn Worldbreaker fleet arrived in the Sol system, they found humanity ready. The battle began at the orbit of Neptune. Human ships didn't wait for the Vryn to come to them. They went to meet them, buying time for Earth to prepare. The first wave was 100 frigates, many of them damaged from previous battles, all crewed by volunteers. They knew it was a suicide run. They attacked anyway. Captain Day Wan commanded one of those frigates. His ship, the Last Stand, had been in 15 battles. It was held together by welds and prayers, but it still flew, and that was enough. All power to forward shields. Ram the nearest battleship, he ordered calmly. His crew didn't hesitate. They had all chosen to be here. The Last Stand accelerated to maximum speed, absorbed hundreds of Vryn weapon strikes, and slammed into a world-breaker battleship at 40,000 kilometers per hour. Both ships vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. 60 frigates died in that first wave. They took 11 world-breaker vessels with them. Admiral Hyun Woo Nam, operating as a secret diplomat, sent one last message to the Vryn High Command. Stop this now. Withdraw your fleet and we can negotiate peace. Continue this attack and you will regret it for generations. The Vryn response was simple. Humanity will be extinct by tomorrow. There is nothing to negotiate. Hyunwoo closed the communication channel and transmitted a different message. This one went to every human ship, every colony, every station. They refused peace. Show them why that was a mistake. The World Breaker fleet pushed past Neptune, then Uranus, heading straight for Earth. General Sujin's platforms opened fire at the orbit of Saturn. The Vryn shields absorbed the shots, but the platforms kept firing. They weren't trying to destroy the fleet. They were draining the shields. Deploy the Saturn protocol, Sujin ordered. Humanity had been mining Saturn's rings for decades. Now thousands of ice chunks, each fitted with rockets and guidance systems, launched from the rings. They were crude weapons, barely more than frozen water with engines. But there were thousands of them and they moved fast. The Vryn shot down most of them. But 60 got through and struck world-breaker hulls. The ice vaporized on impact, but the kinetic energy cracked armor and damaged systems. More importantly, it forced the Vryn fleet to slow down and tighten their formation. That was when Captain Minseo Cho arrived with the Indomitable. The Indomitable was humanity's newest and largest warship, a dreadnought built in secret over 14 months. It massed 3 times more than any other human vessel, and carried weapons designed by Bo Young-shin specifically to crack Vryn shields. All batteries, fire at will, Minseo ordered. She was 36 years old and had commanded civilian vessels before the war. Now she commanded a ship that could kill planets. The Indomitable tore into the Vryn formation like a sword. Its main guns fired crystalline projectiles that phased through shields and detonated inside enemy hulls. Vryn ships exploded from within. Their own reactors turned into bombs. But the Worldbreaker fleet had one advantage: numbers. For every ship the Indomitable destroyed, 5 more fired back. Minseo's shields began to fail. Ma'am, hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We're venting atmosphere. Seal those decks. Keep firing. The Indomitable was dying, but it was dying like a human ship should, taking enemies with it. On Earth, people watched the battle on screens. They saw their defenders fighting and dying in the cold space above their world. They saw the Vryn fleet getting closer. Some prayed, some cried. Some simply held their loved ones. In the Vryn Worldbreaker flagship, the Supreme Commander reviewed his casualties with growing unease. 43 ships destroyed or disabled, for what? We haven't even reached their planet yet. Sir, our intelligence was wrong. The humans have militarized their entire solar system. Every moon, every asteroid, every station is armed. It doesn't matter. We have enough ships to complete the mission. Begin the bombardment when we reach Earth orbit. But Admiral Yuna had arrived. Her fleet jumped into the Sol system between the Vryn and Earth. 200 human warships, every one of them blooded in combat. Every crew experienced and angry. They had been fighting the Vryn for 18 months. They had learned every trick, mastered every tactic, and they were done being afraid. All ships, this is Admiral Yuna. Today we don't fight for territory or strategy. Today we fight for Earth, for our families, for everyone we've lost. Show the Vryn why humanity doesn't lose wars on our home ground. The fleets collided in the space between Earth and Mars. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. Ships exploded every second. Weapons fire lit up the darkness like artificial stars. Human ships used every unconventional tactic they had learned. They rammed. They self-destructed next to larger vessels. They used debris as cover and dead ships as shields. The Vryn fought with their traditional excellence, but excellence wasn't enough anymore. Captain Minseo knew her ship was finished. The Indomitable had lost main power. Half the crew was dead. Life support was failing. But the Vryn flagship was directly ahead and she still had engines. "Evacuate all remaining crew to the escape pods," she ordered quietly. Her executive officer looked at her in shock. "Captain, what are you doing?" "Winning the war, now go." "That's an order." She waited until the last escape pod launched, then locked herself on the bridge. She aimed the Indomitable directly at the Vryn flagship and pushed the throttle to maximum. The dying dreadnought accelerated like a spear thrown by an angry god. The Vryn flagship tried to evade, but the Indomitable was too close and moving too fast. The two massive ships collided at the orbit of Earth's moon. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new star burning briefly in the sky. The Vryn Supreme Commander died in that explosion. So did 4,000 of the Vryn Empire's most experienced warriors, and Captain Min Seo Cho, who had been a cargo hauler captain before the war and became a hero at the end. With their flagship destroyed and their commander dead, the Worldbreaker fleet faltered. For the first time in their history, Vryn ships retreated without orders. The formation collapsed. Ships began jumping to hyperspace individually, fleeing back to Vryn territory. Admiral Yuna's fleet pursued, destroying 12 more vessels before the rest escaped. General Su Jin surveyed the aftermath. Human casualties were catastrophic. 80% of the Sol defense fleet was destroyed or disabled. Thousands dead. The Indomitable was gone. 60 frigates had sacrificed themselves. But Earth survived. Mars survived. Humanity survived. "Get me Ambassador Hyunwoo," Su Jin said tiredly. "Tell him to open a channel to the Vryn High Command. We need to talk to them while they're still in shock." Ambassador Hyunwoo's transmission reached the Vryn homeworld while they were still processing their losses. The Worldbreaker fleet had been defeated. The Supreme Commander was dead. Human forces were pushing into Vryn territory on 5 fronts. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Vryn Empire faced the possibility of losing a war. The human ambassador wishes to negotiate, an aide reported to the Emergency Council. "Negotiate what? Their surrender?" "No, Commander, ours." Silence filled the chamber. The word surrender had never been spoken in that room before. Admiral Daewon, promoted after surviving the Neptune battle, led a strike force deep into Vryn space. His orders were clear: demonstrate that humanity could reach any Vryn world at any time, not to destroy them but to prove it was possible. His ships emerged at a Vryn colony world, broadcast a simple message: humanity offers peace with honor. Or we can continue this war until there is no Vryn Empire left to remember it. Then they jumped away before the local defense fleet could respond. Elder Counselor Jin Hai-song stood before the Galactic Council for the first time. She was 78 years old and had spent 50 years in diplomatic service. She had negotiated trade deals, resolved border disputes, and helped humanity find its place among the stars. Now she was here to dictate terms to the species that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years. "The Vryn Empire has requested peace," she said, her voice strong despite her age. "Humanity accepts, but peace comes with conditions." The council chamber was silent. Representatives from 100 species watched in disbelief. The Vryn delegation, led by Warlord Krenvar, stood stiffly. Krenvar had taken command after the previous Supreme Commander's death. He was old, experienced, and deeply humiliated to be standing here. "State your terms," Krenvar said, his voice like grinding metal. Jinhai pulled up a holographic document. "First, complete withdrawal of all Vryn military forces from human territory. This includes the 12 colonies you occupy and the buffer zones you established." Krenvar nodded slowly. They had expected this. Second, reparations. Your attack on New Busan killed 40,000 civilians without warning or declaration of war. You will pay for the rebuilding of that colony and provide compensation to the families of those murdered. The word murdered made the Vryn delegation shift uncomfortably. In their culture, there was no such thing as murder in war. But they were not dictating the terms today. Third, demilitarization. All Vryn military bases within 50 light-years of human space will be dismantled. Your fortress worlds in the neutral zones will be converted to civilian use. That is unacceptable, Krenvar said. Those fortresses have stood for 3,000 years. They stood until we took them, Admiral Yuna said from her position behind Jin Hai. Be grateful we're not demanding you dismantle your entire military. Yet. Krenvar looked at the human admiral with something that might have been respect. She had fought him to a standstill across a dozen battles. Her tactics had frustrated him, impressed him, and ultimately defeated him. If the Vryn must lose to someone, at least it was to a worthy warrior. What else? He asked. Jinhai's next word shocked everyone. You will release 6 species from vassalage. The Talarian, the Kemnar, the Borathi, the Nexian, the Urathi, and the Skellan. They will be granted full independence and protection under Galactic Council law. The council chamber erupted in noise. The Vryn had held those species as vassals for centuries. They provided labor, resources, and soldiers for the Vryn Empire. Releasing them would cripple Vryn power for a generation. You ask us to destroy ourselves, Krenvar said. No, Jinhai replied. We ask you to become what you should have been. A strong species among equals, not a tyrant crushing others. You can rebuild your empire through trade and cooperation, or you can refuse these terms and we continue the war until your empire is nothing but memory. Ambassador Hyunwoo stepped forward. He had been working behind the scenes for months, opening secret channels with Vryn moderates who wanted the war to end. Warlord Krenvar, you know humanity can reach your core worlds now. We've proven it. If this war continues, we will not stop at military targets. We will do to your worlds what you did to New Busan. We don't want that. We don't enjoy destruction, but we will do it if forced. It was a threat delivered with quiet certainty. The humans had shown they were capable of anything. Krenvar looked at his delegation. He saw the exhaustion in their eyes. The Vryn Empire had lost 30% of its military in less than 2 years of fighting. Their economy was strained. Their population was questioning their leadership. And the humans showed no signs of stopping. We accept your terms, he said finally. The Treaty of Sol was signed 3 weeks later aboard a neutral station. Representatives from every council species attended. The document ran to 300 pages covering every detail of the peace agreement. But the core was simple. The Vryn would never threaten humanity again, and they would release their hold on 6 conquered species. Dr. Hannah Park published her research paper the day after the treaty signing. It was titled, Why Humanity Prevailed, an analysis of human military psychology. It became the most read document in galactic history. Humans evolved on a death world, she wrote. Earth is a planet where 99% of all species that ever lived went extinct, where ice ages and volcanoes and asteroids regularly reset the evolutionary clock, where predators hunted from every direction, and survival required constant adaptation. Humanity is the result of 3 million years of fighting a planet that tried to kill us. We learned to be persistent, creative, and stubbornly unwilling to give up. When the Vryn attacked us, they weren't fighting a military. They were fighting a species that survived their own world's attempts to exterminate them. We are fundamentally survivors, and survivors never quit. The paper explained why humanity's tactics worked, why human soldiers kept fighting when victory seemed impossible, why human civilians on occupied worlds refused to submit. It wasn't stupidity or recklessness. It was evolutionary programming. Humans had learned across millions of years that giving up meant death, so they simply didn't give up. Captain Daewon accepted an offer to teach at Earth's military academy. On his first day, facing a classroom of young officers, he told them the story of the war. He spoke of the 40,000 dead on New Busan, of the miners on Kepler 442b who fought with mining equipment, of Captain Minseo's sacrifice above Earth, of the Ghost Fleet and the resistance fighters and all the ordinary people who became extraordinary. You need to understand something, he said. We didn't win because we were stronger or smarter or better equipped. We won because we refused to lose. The Vryn made a mistake. They thought the first battle determined the war. But for humans, every battle is the first battle. Every fight is fought with everything we have. That's what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons or our tactics, but our absolute refusal to accept defeat. He looked at the young faces watching him. Hope for peace. Always hope for peace, but if war comes, remember what your ancestors did. Fight like humanity depends on it, because it does. On the liberated colony of Harmony Station, Lieutenant Jae-hyun helped rebuild what the Vryn had destroyed. His resistance cell had lost 40 fighters during the occupation, including Soo-jin, who died in the final battle. The colony erected a memorial with all their names. Jae-hyun stood before that memorial and made a promise. We will never forget. We will never let anyone forget what happened here, what you sacrificed, why we fight, so that maybe someday, no one will dare to attack humanity again. The 6 species released from Vryn vassalage joined the Galactic Council as independent members. They looked to humanity with gratitude and curiosity. How had these young upstarts done what ancient civilizations could not? The Talarian ambassador spoke for all of them at the council. We fought the Vryn for 50 years and lost. Humanity fought for 2 years and won. When we asked them how, they said something we didn't understand at first. They said we fought for something worth dying for. We fought to survive. They fought for their home, their families, their right to exist without bowing to tyrants. That difference mattered. Admiral Yuna retired after the war. She was offered every honor, every medal, every promotion. She refused them all. Give those honors to the crews who didn't come home, she said. I was just the one giving orders. They were the ones following them into hell. She spent her retirement writing a tactical manual that became required reading at every military academy in the galaxy. The introduction explained her philosophy simply. Forget everything you know about proper warfare. War isn't about honor or tradition or following rules. War is about winning so you can go home. Fight smart, fight dirty, fight with everything you have, and never ever fight humans on their own ground. The 3 human colonies that the Vryn initially demanded became memorial worlds. New Busan was rebuilt, but the site of the original colony was preserved as a monument. 40,000 names were carved in stone along with a simple message. They died because someone chose war. We fought because someone had to stop them. Remember both lessons. 10 years after the war ended, Dr. Hannah Park visited a joint research station operated by humans and Vryn. It still felt strange seeing the 2 species working together, but the younger generation had grown up after the war. They saw each other as colleagues rather than enemies. A young Vryn scientist approached her. Dr. Park, may I ask you something? Of course. In the war, humanity could have destroyed the Vryn homeworld. Your fleets had the capability. Why didn't you? Hannah smiled. Because that's what the old Vryn Empire would have done. We didn't fight to become monsters. We fought to stop them. There's a difference. The young Vryn nodded slowly, processing this. My grandfather fought in the war. He was captured at the Battle of Kepler 442b. He said humans treated him better than his own commanders did. He never understood why. Because we drew a line between soldiers and civilians, between combat and cruelty. Your grandfather was a soldier following orders. We respected that. It was your leaders who chose war. They were the ones responsible. Is that why the peace lasted? Because you didn't humiliate us? Partly. We learned from Earth's history that humiliating a defeated enemy just creates the next war.